By the time Judge Fleischer took off his glasses and said, in a voice so quiet it somehow hit harder than a scream, "Miss Bellamy, I am fatigued by your performance." The entire courtroom already knew something extraordinary was happening. The woman in the cream designer suit had walked in like she owned the building, chin high, lip curled, diamonds blinking under the cold fluorescent light. Across from her sat a 61-year-old school cafeteria worker in a navy dress she had clearly ironed twice, hands folded tight enough to hide the trembling, as if dignity itself were the only thing she had left to wear. Nobody came into that room expecting history. But before the morning was over, a woman who believed she was untouchable would be stripped down to the truth in front of everyone, and the silence that followed would feel like thunder. If you've ever seen somebody mistake money for character, somebody confuse volume for truth, go ahead and leave your comment, because what Judge Fleischer did that day still gets talked about in courthouse hallways like a warning passed from one generation to the next. And if you believe justice should hit hard when cruelty hides behind privilege, stay with this one, because that's when everything changed. At first, it looked small, petty even. Monique Bellamy, a polished PTA celebrity with a social media smile and a habit of speaking like every room owed her applause, had filed a civil complaint against Evelyn Carter, the lunch lady at Briarwood Academy. Monique claimed Evelyn had assaulted her 10-year-old son in the school pickup lane, striking him with a metal serving tray during a confrontation that left the boy emotionally traumatized and her family publicly humiliated. She wanted damages. She wanted the school to fire Evelyn. She wanted a restraining order. More than that, she wanted victory, the kind that doesn't just hurt somebody but teaches them their place. Evelyn Carter looked nothing like a woman built for court. Her shoes were sensible. Her posture was straight, but only because life had forced it straight. A widow, 2 bus rides to work, a grandson with asthma, extra evening shifts at the senior center kitchen. She had the kind of tired face that told the truth before her mouth ever opened. When Judge Fleischer asked if she understood the complaint, she stood carefully and said, "Yes, Your Honor, but I didn't hit that child. I pulled another child out of the path of a car." That should have been the moment Monique kept quiet. Instead, she gave a soft laugh, one sharp enough to cut skin. "Your Honor, with respect, she's a lunch lady, not a traffic expert. These people turn every mistake into a performance." The courtroom went silent, not because people had never heard contempt before, because everyone heard the word "these." Everyone heard what she meant. Everyone saw Evelyn lower her eyes for 1 second, just one, as if she had spent her whole life swallowing insults exactly like that and had learned long ago that reacting only fed people like Monique. Judge Fleischer didn't raise his voice. He just leaned back, steepled his fingers, and studied Monique with the expression of a man who had seen every trick vanity could invent. Judge Fleischer had a reputation that stretched far beyond his district. He was not theatrical. He didn't pound the bench. He didn't grandstand. He simply listened until liars ran out of room. Tall, silver-haired, tailored black robe hanging from his frame like a warning flag, he had the unnerving stillness of someone who never needed to prove authority because authority arrived before he did. He glanced at Monique's attorney, then at the exhibits, then back at Monique. "Confidence," he said, "is not evidence." Monique's smile flickered, but only for a second. Her attorney called the first witness, the private pediatric therapist she'd hired to testify about the child's stress response. The therapist spoke in careful language about anxiety, crying spells, sleep disruption. Then came printed photos of a bruised forearm. Monique dabbed her eye with a tissue she did not need. From the back benches came a few sympathetic murmurs. On the surface, the case was working. Evelyn looked smaller by the minute. Then Judge Fleischer asked a simple question. "What time exactly did this alleged assault occur?" 3:17 p.m., Monique said immediately. He looked at the therapist. "And when did you first examine the child?" "According to my notes, 4:05 p.m." Judge Fleischer nodded. "Interesting, because the school nurse report shows the child was never seen by the nurse that day, and the school dismissal logs show your son left campus at 3:11. Monique straightened. Those logs are often wrong. Are they wrong, he asked mildly, or merely inconvenient? A few people in the gallery shifted forward. Her attorney asked to move on. That was when Evelyn's court appointed lawyer, a young public interest attorney everyone had underestimated, requested permission to play campus security footage. Monique actually smirked. She crossed one leg over the other, gold heel swinging. Please, she said, let's end this. The screen lit up at the front of the courtroom. Grainy, wide angle, ordinary, staff lane, crosswalk, children pouring out in uniforms. Evelyn appeared carrying a tray stack from an outdoor fundraiser table. Then Monique's SUV came into frame too fast, gliding past the posted stop sign, phone in one hand, sunglasses still on. A little boy chasing a dropped inhaler stepped off the curb. In one movement so fast it barely looked human, Evelyn dropped the trays and lunged, catching him by the backpack and yanking him backward as the SUV clipped the edge of the curb where he had been standing a heartbeat before. Gasps broke loose all over the courtroom. The metal trays scattered. One spun into Monique's front tire. Another struck her own son's arm as he stumbled toward the car. Evelyn never touched him, not once. She had been saving a different child. Monique's color changed so suddenly it was visible from the back row. That's edited, she snapped. That angle doesn't show what happened after. Judge Fleischer didn't even blink. Counsel? The second angle came from a teacher's phone, then a third from the opposite corner camera. Same story, same speed, same near impact, same desperate grab by Evelyn, same lie collapsing in real time. And still Monique tried to fight it. My son was hysterical. She caused chaos. She shouldn't have been in the lane to begin with. That was when Evelyn's lawyer introduced the text messages. Not rumors, not recollections. Screenshots pulled under subpoena from Monique's own phone after she had threatened the school with a donor lawsuit. The first was sent 20 minutes before pickup. Watch me get that cafeteria woman gone today. The second came after the incident. Perfect. She touched Liam. I can use this. The third, sent to another PTA mother, was colder than all the rest. Poor people always get brave around cameras. I'll remind her whose school this is. The courtroom went dead silent. Even the air felt embarrassed. Monique's attorney whispered frantically beside her, but Monique was the kind of arrogant that doesn't know how to retreat. She leaned forward and said the sentence that ended her. Your Honor, these staff people forget themselves. If every emotional employee gets to accuse a parent, the whole school falls apart. Not anger, not outrage. What moved across Judge Fleischer's face was worse. It was disappointment sharpened into judgment. Ms. Bellamy, he said, you seem to suffer from the delusion that employment status determines human worth. It does not. Not in this courtroom. Not under this law. That should have been enough. It wasn't. Because buried beneath the false assault claim was the real reason Monique needed Evelyn destroyed. 3 weeks earlier, Evelyn had asked a question at a PTA supply drive. It had been a quiet question, the kind polite people ask softly. She had wanted to know why the fundraiser money for student emergency inhalers had not yet purchased the inhalers. Her grandson wasn't the only child at Briarwood who needed them. The school had advertised a Breathe Easy fund. Parents had donated. Teachers had donated. Evelyn had donated $12 from tips she could not spare. The inhalers were never bought. Subpoenaed bank records showed why: transfers, boutique charges, a spa weekend, designer children's clothing. A deposit to Monique Bellamy's personal account labeled temporary reimbursement. Then witness after witness stood up and placed another brick on the pile. The treasurer said Monique bullied her into signing blank authorizations. A teacher testified Monique ordered staff to say Evelyn had caused the incident. The assistant principal admitted he delayed reporting the footage because Monique had promised to ruin the school if anyone contradicted her. Then came the letter from Monique's own son, written to the school counselor in shaky pencil and entered through the guardian ad litem. Please tell the judge Ms. Carter saved Eli. Mom said if I said that, Dad would stop helping us and everything would be my fault. Nobody moved. Nobody coughed. The courtroom went silent in that terrible, sacred way it does when innocence enters the record. Monique finally cracked. He's a child. He's confused. Judge Fleischer looked at her for a long time. No, Ms. Bellamy, he is frightened. There is a difference. By then, the arrogance had drained out of her like color from old fabric. Her shoulders, once thrown back in effortless superiority, had folded inward. The hand that had flashed so many rings now trembled against counsel table. But Judge Fleischer was not finished, and everybody in that room knew they were about to hear something people would repeat for years. He removed his glasses, set them down, and began. I have presided over violent felonies, family tragedies, corporate fraud, custody wars, and every species of human deceit. What I find most corrosive is not merely dishonesty, but dishonesty enlisted in the service of humiliation. You did not come to this court seeking justice. You came seeking domination. You identified a woman with fewer resources, less social standing, and no protection but her own integrity, and you assumed that would be enough to bury her. When reality contradicted your narrative, you recruited your child, manipulated your community, and attempted to weaponize the prestige of a school against the decency of a working woman who, by all credible evidence, saved a child from bodily harm. He paused, and the fluorescent lights hummed over absolute stillness. You wore power like perfume, Ms. Bellamy, but underneath it was rot. Let me be crystal clear. A lie spoken loudly is still a lie, and this court has excellent hearing. A shiver went through the room. He continued, voice calm, devastating. The plaintiff's complaint is dismissed with prejudice. On the counterclaim, judgment is entered for Ms. Evelyn Carter for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and abuse of process. Punitive damages are awarded in the amount of $350,000. A permanent protective order will issue. Certified copies of today's record, including evidence suggestive of perjury, witness tampering, and misappropriation of PTA funds earmarked for student medical needs, will be referred to the district attorney before close of business. Monique made a broken sound, half gasp, half plea. Your Honor, please. He held up one hand. I am not done. You will also reimburse the emergency inhaler fund in full with additional penalties, and you will have no volunteer or governance role at Briarwood Academy pending the outcome of any criminal proceedings. The child at the center of this case will receive court-appointed counseling independent of your influence. And let this be understood by anyone listening. No amount of money, makeup, education, or social status entitles a person to treat another human being as disposable. That was the moment Monique Bellamy collapsed. Not dramatically, not cinematically in the way movies do it. It was smaller than that and somehow crueler. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her body seemed to realize before her mind did that the performance was over. She sat down very slowly, staring at the table like it might still offer her an exit. It didn't. Evelyn Carter didn't cry right away. She stood there with her worn handbag and her sensible shoes, and the kind of stunned stillness that only comes when a person has been preparing for unfairness for so long that fairness feels unreal. Then her lawyer touched her sleeve, and Evelyn covered her face with both hands. Not because she had won money, because for the first time in that room, in that school, maybe in years, somebody powerful had looked straight at the truth and refused to look away. Later, people said the ripple effects were immediate. Parents demanded a full audit. The inhaler program was funded within 48 hours and renamed the Carter Emergency Wellness Fund after Evelyn tried, unsuccessfully, to refuse the honor. The assistant principal resigned. 2 board members stepped down. Monique's carefully polished online image disintegrated faster than anyone thought possible, and by the end of the month, the district attorney had filed charges. As for Evelyn, the school offered her paid leave, then a permanent role coordinating student meal and safety programs. She accepted only after making them promise that no child would ever again go without emergency medication, because adults with money found suffering easy to ignore. And Judge Fleischer? He went on to his next case that afternoon, as if he hadn't just detonated an entire empire of arrogance with a few pages of law and a spine made of steel. That was his way, calm, intelligent, devastating. Legendary not because he performed justice, but because he served it cold, clean, and final. So if this one hit you in the chest, if you've ever watched someone with power try to grind down someone with nothing but dignity and grit, leave your comment. Tell me whether Judge Fleischer's line belongs in the Hall of Fame. like, subscribe, and share this with somebody who still believes truth doesn't need a designer suit to win. Because sometimes the courtroom goes silent for a reason. Sometimes that silence means evil has finally run out of things to say.